It's been a belief for a very, very long time that infantry commanders are some of the strongest commanders in the whole entire game. Today, I'll be giving you a 6-march murder ball for infantry, while also telling you at the end of the video if I think that this still holds up. Are infantry still the best troop in Rise of Kingdoms?
Now stand aside, worthy adversary.
'Tis but a scratch.
A scratch?
So let's just start off with the first march. Right out the bat, Scipio Prime with Guan Yu. You want the Guan Yu as the primary, Scipio as the secondary. This is arguably one of the best marches available in the whole entire game right now. Guan Yu has 2000 damage factor to 3 targets and then silences them for 3 seconds. That's a really, really powerful debuff. Basically, giving 3 people a silence is just stupidly powerful. No commander does a debuff at that level at all. There's nothing close to it. So Guan Yu with Scipio Africanus is extremely strong. Guan Yu's third skill gives him a bunch of stats. I really like 30% attack, 15% march speed. The healing actually is very interesting. If you get an empty flag and you keep hitting it with your Guan Yu, you can actually regen all your troops back. Very, very unique way of using it. I've seen a bunch of people doing it. It was kind of funny. Like in our KVK, we took out a flag and everyone with Guan Yu was just swarming it, even when it was empty, to heal their Guan Yu up. So that's one interesting use for that. Other than that, it's not really that amazing. And then on your fourth skill, you just gain a bunch of additional damage factor. So making him deal even more damage factor. Basically, when Saint of War hits only one enemy, it has a 50% chance to deal additional damage factor of 1000. And if it hits 2, 50% chance to deal 800 or 1400, when maxed, to the same targeted enemy. A lot of damage factor right there. I think that's very powerful, especially for duels and one-on-one battles. And even then, if you're hitting 2 targets, it's even more powerful. His expertise basically makes him get a bunch of stuff when he's in shields and when he leaves structures. It's not bad, but it's not that amazing, and it's not too valuable. Scipio Africanus though, massive damage on his active skills, same damage factor as Guan Yu, but except he can be secondary with this. It is a damage factor of 2000 up to 3 targets, also with a 30% health reduction, extremely strong right there. Second skill, bunch of stats, he's got 15% march speed, and he can trigger even more march speed outside of Alliance territory. Then, on his third skill, he increases his health by 20% when attacking other troops, and grants each attack a 10% chance to deal additional damage of 1500 over 3 seconds, so 500 a turn. This can trigger once every 8 seconds. It's a lot of instant damage right there. I really, really like it. Fourth skill, whenever you take skill damage, 50% chance to reduce that damage by up to 30%, so that's really nice. And then a shield that covers up to 3 allied troops for 3 seconds, so like Alexander the Great right there, with a shield factor of 500. Really nice as well. His expertise, he increases skill damage dealt by 10% when the target is silenced. That's really where Guan Yu comes in. If you silence a target and then Scipio's active skill gets thrown, boom, 10% more damage right out the bat. And then rage grows 30% faster when they're silenced. So that's a nice boost as well. You're getting an extra 30 rage per turn basically, since on average you get 100 rage per turn, something like that. One thing to note, you can also put Alexander the Great with Scipio. I'll go a bit more in depth on Alexander the Great later, but I'm sure most players know a lot about him already. For your second march, you will still be running that Guan Yu and Scipio Africanus, but then you will run a Tariq Ibn Ziyad with a Sargon the Great. A lot of people say Sargon's not that good, his active skill's bad because you have to actually attack the target. But even if you hit the target for 3 turns, you're still dealing 1500 damage factor. You are basically giving them a massive debuff. You have a bunch of health, you have a bunch of attack, you have a bunch of march speed, you have a bunch of all damage, and on top of all that, you give yourself a shield and you deal even more damage to the opponents. And then once you expertise him, if he gets swarmed, he's basically dealing a debuff to everyone that attacks him. So I think he's a very, very powerful commander and there's no way around it. I would be using my Sargon the Great with a Tariq Ibn Ziyad any day of the week. Tariq is actually quite a tanky commander for some reason. I like Tariq's active skill, you're dealing 2200 damage factor, and then if he's surrounded, he deals an additional damage factor of 300 to that target. He also has a bunch of stats on his second skill, third skill's for rallies. His fourth skill, he has a chance to gain an increased all damage, also he just has increased all damage, and then a 10% chance to reduce the target's rage by 80 for 3 seconds. Basically, he's making the target take like no rage for 3 turns. They go from 110 rage-ish per turn to about 30, and that's really, really good. Like, that's 240 rage over 3 turns is crazy. Expertise for Tariq increases his damage by a boatload, 2500, and then also when he's surrounded, he deals some type of AoE to 3 people, basically. Very, very powerful right there. You could also consider, once again, Alexander the Great with Sargon, but that's a little bit less optimal. So now we'll move on to the third pairing, and this is where you will still be sticking with that Guan Yu and that Scipio Africanus, and you'll still be using Tariq Ibn Ziyad and Sargon the Great. They're going to be your 2 best marchers, and now you'll have to move into an older pair, and that's going to be Pakal and Harold. These commanders are very, very tanky. Like in every way, they've got massive counter attack, massive damage taken reductions, and Pakal specifically is just like really, really good with Harold. So Pakal, just starting off, he's not that amazing on his active skill, gives himself a shield, deals a little bit of damage factor. On his second skill, 30% health, he also gains a 15% march speed, and when he launches a rally, that's useless. Third skill, once again, is a rally skill, that's useless. Fourth skill though, he reduces all damage taken by 10%, that's straight up amazing. And when on the map, gains an extra all damage reduction when surrounded. The damage reduction is 5% times the maximum of 6 enemies, so he gains up to a 40% all damage taken reduction. Stupid high right there, and there's no commander even close to that. And then he deals 20% increased counterattack, which is amazing. You can see he's really, really banking in on that counterattack and dealing a bunch of damage back. Takes 5% less damage from all sources for 3 seconds after using an active skill. Once every 5 seconds. Just right there, very, very tanky, very powerful commander. Only all damage though, he has nothing but damage. Harold, on the other hand, has massive damage on his active skill. So if not surrounded, he deals a damage factor of 1,200. If surrounded, he deals damage up to 3 targets of 1,500. So he'll either be dealing 1,200 damage factor, which is not that much, or he'll be dealing 4,500 damage factor, which is quite a bloody bit. It is reduced per target, but I mean, it's still very powerful. And then on top of all that, he gains an increased all damage of 20% for 2 seconds. Very, very anti-swarm there. Second skill, this is a rally skill. Third skill, he gains 30% increased attack, 10% march speed, and then infantry attack per stack. So whenever he uses an active skill, infantry units gain 5% more attack but lose 5% defense. This lasts 8 seconds and can stack up to 15 times. Very good for longer engagements, however, it's not as powerful for like short bursty fights. I'm presuming the defense does not keep going up with each stack. It looks like you only lose the 5% defense once because it is not bolded, but it may still be that you lose the defense as well. I'm not too sure on that. Fourth skill, when troops led by this commander are on the map and use their normal attack, this commander has a 5% chance, 20% when max, to cast their active skill and grant their troops immunity to all defense reduction for 3 seconds. Can trigger once every 5 seconds. Basically, once every 5 turns, you'll be throwing your active skill again, so that's really, really powerful. It's basically an instant proc active skill before Drone Prime even existed. His expertise, counterattack damage dealt on the map is increased by 20%. You can see we're really going in on counterattack here. If surrounded, it's increased by a further damage equals a number, so it's 2% extra per enemy, up to 20%. So you can see right there, Harold is a very, very powerful commander with Pakal, but it's only damage. They have nothing but damage in their kit, and it's certainly a very replaceable march. Also, should note that Alexander the Great can work very well with Harold. Alexander the Great's got a massive instant proc damage, so I really do like that pair, and Alexander the Great's shield is really nice. For 4 marches, you'll be using Shiok Jungaeong. I completely butchered that, I'm so sorry. But let's just call him CJ. So with CJ, his active skill does 1,700 damage factor to the target regardless, and if they have been reduced to 30% or less units, he deals a nice 300 extra damage factor. Nothing too amazing there, it's very simple, but it's not too bad. Second skill, he gains 40% increased attack and does 5% extra all damage to cavalry. Third skill, while on the map, he has a 40% chance to take 50% reduced skill damage, can trigger once every 4 seconds. So that's really, really strong. I'm not sure how this actually triggers. I'm presuming whenever he takes skill damage, there's a chance he just negates half of it. And I really, really like that. That's actually a very, very tanky reduction right there. You can see that, like my intro suggested, they are very, very tanky commanders for the most part. Fourth skill, if troops led by this commander consist of only infantry units, which they should, they gain 15% increased march speed with a 50% chance to deal 5% more skill damage for 8 seconds when attacking. This can trigger once every 4 seconds and can stack up to 8 times. So he can gain up to a 40% skill damage bonus, which is really, really powerful, and there's nothing in the whole entire game that comes even close to that besides like YSG. Once you expertise him, his 50% less skill damage skill becomes way more powerful. While on the map, he still has that 40% chance to take 50% less skill damage, and damage up to 3 enemies in a fan-shaped area. The damage equals the number of sacrifice buffs times 50. If this attack is reduced by 15% per target, and now it can trigger once every 3 seconds instead of once every 4 seconds. Sacrifice buffs are his 4th skill, so every single one of these you have, you will deal a nice AoE up to 3 enemies. It's not too much AoE, it's only 400 to 3 targets each, and that's not too powerful, but it's being reduced, so it's even weaker. But for the most part, that's a nice buff right there. The best part about this is now it can trigger once every 3 seconds instead of once every 4 seconds. Alexander the Great is very, very much the same. He has the shield to himself and all his allies, really powerful. Third skill is a bunch of instant damage and healing effect reduction to all the targets. While on the map, he gains 30% increased march speed, 30% attack, really fast, really high damage commander right there. And then on his 4th skill, 20% increased attack, and when shielded, he gains 30% increased defense instead. It's 40% increased attack when max, sorry. So now when you expertise him, he also shields 3 enemies, which I don't know what that means, but I'm presuming it just means like he debuffs them. And they take 30% increased all damage for 4 seconds. Meanwhile, he puts the small shield on his troops still, and that's really powerful. So the recap of the 4 marches, you'll be running still that Guan Yu with that Scipio Africanus, You'll run Tarek with Sargon, Harold with Pakal. Pakal will be the primary, and then you will run Alexander the Great primary and Cheok secondary. Very, very powerful 4 marches right there. And now we're going on to 5 marches. Not as powerful though. For your 5th march, you will have to run a Charles Martel with preferably a Honda, a Mehmed, or a Ethelfled. I think that Charles Martel is probably best off with Honda just for the absolute boatload of damage. But if you're only running infantry marches and you're never going to run anything else, you kind of need to throw the Ethelfled in there because you want that defense reduction and you want that attack reduction. Plus, the slow Ethelfled offers is really nice. Honda, same as usual, just a very, very powerful commander. He's basically like the best secondary to any commander in the whole entire game. Could consider Mehmed, but I think he's not as valuable in this situation. You either want really good debuffs or a really, really good secondary with Charles Martel. Now, Charles Martel, very, very simple commander, yet he's somewhat powerful. Active skill, he gives himself a shield of 1200, and he gets all damage bonus of 30%. Simple right there, pretty powerful, I like it a lot. For his second skill, he gains 15% defense and 15% health. Just base stats right there, it's kind of low in comparison to some other commanders that do exist nowadays, but it's not too bad. Third skill is only for garrisoning cities, and on his 4th skill, you gain 30% increase to counterattack just all the time. I really like that. It's just a nice, massive counterattack buff. And it's kind of on par with Pakal and Harold. However, you're not getting anything else with Charles Martel, which is why he is in that 5th march. Then, when you expertise him, he gains 20% increased defense, 20% increased health, and 20% increased march speed. So you do really want to expertise your Martel if you're going to use him. Hopefully, you get a lot of his sculptures from the gold chest or the daily bundle. One thing to note, you could obviously relic your Charles Martel inside of the museum. His relic is not amazing, but it's not that bad. So looking at his relic, you gain 35% increased infantry attack and 10% infantry health. It's a really nice relic. And I mean, they are stronger, but it's not too bad. So for the 5 marches, you will still be running that Guan Yu with Scipio Africanus, the Tarek with the Sargon, Harold with Pakal, the Alexander the Great with Cheok, and now you'll be running a Charles Martel with either Ethelfled, Honda, or Mehmed, preferably Honda or Ethelfled. For 6 marches, you really have to get a bad commander at this point, in my opinion, and that's Richard I. There are 2 options here. You could just go for a literal pure tank that gets horrible trades and it only takes damage. That would be a Richard with a Constantine. No one's really going to be able to kill the march, it just won't trade at all, in any way very well. It's going to be healing an absolute boatload. Richard has a bunch of stats that just make him very tanky. He doesn't really do much damage to the opponents. I mean, like, he has some counterattack bonuses, and he has a bit of attack and defense. Other than that, he's not really doing much. He is kind of just a tanky commander. I think when Lilith made him at the time, they were thinking of making a type of commander that just tanks damage, and they didn't really think that the meta would shift to getting good trades. But nowadays, you do really want to be hitting your opponent back. So with Richard, he's not a very good commander, but you're going for 6 marches here, you're kind of desperate. Constantine is the other option with Richard, so I'd use Richard with Constantine if you just want to tank. If not, you can use Richard with either a Mehmed, a Honda, or an Ethelfled, whichever one you didn't use with your Charles Martel. I think that's certainly fine. I don't think it's going to trade amazingly, but it won't trade too bad. So overall, in my opinion, the best 6 infantry marches are Guan Yu primary, Scipio secondary, Tarek primary, Sargon the Great secondary, Pakal primary, Harold secondary, Alexander the Great primary, CJ secondary, Charles Martel primary, and then either Ethelfled, Honda, or Mehmed secondary. And then you will go with a Richard primary, and then whichever commander you didn't put with your Charles Martel, so either Ethelfled, Mehmed, or Honda. So what's my opinion on infantry right now as being the best troop? I think it's not true. I just think if you're running a pure infantry murderball, infantry are not close to the best troop. They have the 2 best marches in the game, probably, with that Sargon the Great and the Tarek, and the Guan Yu with the Scipio. I think that's very, very powerful. But in my opinion, I think cavalry and archers in a 6-march murderball bring more to the table. Archers have a bunch of debuffs and a bunch of skill damage. They have very unique commanders which pair in very unique ways. They have Tamiris, who I think is somewhat better than Sargon for debuffs. But they also just have better marches. Like, I would rather an Artemisia and a Manatori over a Charles Martel any day. I would rather a Ramses over a Charles Martel any day. So you can see here, once you get past like 3 to 4 marches with infantry, they really start to lose their value. This is because infantry commanders do tend to be only damage. I don't really see many infantry commanders until the time of Guan Yu that had debuffs. Like, Alexander the Great has a debuff somewhat. Charles Martel has no debuffs. Richard's debuff is bad. Constantine has no debuffs. Leonidas had no debuffs. You can see a lot of these commanders are just damage. Harold's just damage. Pakal's just damage. CJ's just damage. So all just damage commanders right here. So yes, infantry are very powerful right now. But in terms of free-to-play usage, you are trying to focus on those debuff commanders. And really only Guan Yu, Scipio, Sargon, and somewhat Tarek are the only commanders that really offer really good debuffs. So overall, I think infantry at the moment are certainly on par with cavalry and archers, but I don't think they're much further above especially if you're running a 6-march murderball. At that point, I think they are slightly worse. Now, if you disagree with anything I said throughout the video, anything at all, if I missed a pair you really like, or you want to pair a different commander with a different commander, let me know in the comments. I love to learn more about Rise of Kingdoms. You never know, your march may be featured in my next top infantry marches video. If you enjoyed though, please do consider subscribing to the channel. I am trying to hit 1,000 subscribers by June when I start my restart account, which is going to be all Siege, nothing but Siege units. It's going to be a very fun and unique time, and trust me, it's worth subscribing for. Now, I do thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.